Welcome into the Bobby Carpenter Show, and it is a big weekend to preview. It's Championship Saturday. Where did the season go? And for that, we bring in our guy, Mr. Ben Scott Stevens, the best in the biz, to talk a little bit. He was kind enough to flexible for us last week in the midst of construction. It looks like back in his safe, friendly confines now in Big Ten Alley, somewhere between Iowa and Northwestern, right there, doing a great job for us. Ben, kind of what were your thoughts coming out of the weekend, sir? We have a good Thanksgiving, number one, and then did we enjoy the football that surrounded it?
Yeah, Thanksgiving was fantastic. In the National Football League, many upsets, which spoiled many bets, but hey, that's how things are going to go. And then Rivalry weekend was always going to be sensational, lived up to its billing. Black Friday in the Big Ten, a couple of rivalry dominant performances out of Iowa to get to 8 wins. Indiana leaving no doubt in the old Oak and Bucket game against Purdue. And of course, for your boys there, in Columbus, finally being able to exercise those demons on the road in Ann Arbor. And for the first time in a half decade of the game, as I basically predicted each and every previous time in the 4-game skid, the Buckeyes were the better team, entering the better team on paper, and displayed that in full force in Ann Arbor against Michigan. I think Ohio State enters championship weekend, not only the favorite to win a Big Ten title for the first time since 2020, but guys, of course, looking like that number one team in the country and probably earning that number one overall seed to the college football playoff.
Well, I want to go to this, Ben. Of all the teams that played rivalry week, the ones that are in the conference championship games, you've already kind of articulated about what Ohio State did, and they've been consistent.
Yeah.
Regardless of who they played, they've covered. They've done what, and they looked good doing it. Who of the other ones are getting better as the season progresses now going into conference championship week that you learned about them last week that you really had some hesitation about?
You know, it's a really interesting question, Schlegs, because when you look at the Big 12, for instance, Texas Tech did not really play in a rivalry. They ended the year with a 49-zip spank down of West Virginia. Same story for BYU, unless you consider Scott Frost and UCF entering Provo a rivalry bout. I would say everybody would say no to that. Really, it's the two teams out of the SEC, both winning by a single score in their rivalries last week. We have always said it. On the Plains, especially in Jordan-Hare, the Iron Bowl can be confounding. Alabama did not look to be at its best, especially on the offensive side, which has carried the water for the Tide so far this season. Certainly did in the victory between the hedges in Sanford Stadium, led by Ty Simpson, who at that point was a Heisman Trophy frontrunner, has kind of fallen off of the Heisman Trophy race. Georgia held Georgia Tech to only 250 yard legs in Atlanta, but the offense as well for the Dogs sputtering against the Georgia Tech defense that, as we had seen through ACC play, would let you rack it up. Those are the two that I think I have the most questions on entering their conference championship game, at least based on what we saw in the rivalry matchups to end out the regular season.
So looking at some of these odds, some of the futures, Ohio State, the betting favorite to win the national championship. Indiana's near the top. I believe Georgia's up there. A lot of conversation has been around Notre Dame, which flopped with Alabama. They're currently the last at large spot getting in, with the ACC potentially, or the Sun Belt and American champions getting in. There's talk that maybe they could be left out. Should BYU win, it would bump them out. Should BYU get smoked, they get back-to-back with Miami and then maybe get bumped out. However, I look at Notre Dame, I think in a lot of places about plus 1,000. They're in the 5th or 6th betting spot, tied with a lot of teams, which is kind of wild. I think they're playing great and they can get in. But to be able to win it, Ben, you have to be in the tournament. Should we lean more into what Vegas is saying than maybe what the CFP committee just dropping them one spot?
Oh, it's a really good question, Bobby, because I think both when you look at the national championship odds and what the CFP committee does, the national championship odds, of course, are a power rating based on those teams. But to your point, you have to make the college football playoff field. And I think there is a lot to look at this CFP committee so far, and at least the rationale they have given us in the 4 weeks of these rankings, and say, we don't really know what exactly is going to win the day. Because again, I've said this every time we have had a college football playoff. This is now the 12th year, even the second with 12 teams. There is no strict guidelines. There are no standards in logistics and protocols. The college football playoff selection committee must follow each and every year. Oftentimes, year over year, they highlight something different: strength of schedule, head-to-head victories, key metrics, and eye test. We have no idea what they are highlighting. So, Bobby, to your point, I don't think Notre Dame is safe. Depending on what happens with BYU in the Big 12 title game, as Hunter Yurachek, the new CFP chair, has told us now for 3 consecutive weeks, Notre Dame and Miami are not necessarily being compared using that week 1 head-to-head because they are not right next to each other. Well, BYU gets knocked out of the Big 12 championship game and they don't look great against Texas Tech for a second straight time. Then does Notre Dame next to Miami, does the head-to-head then win the day? What happens with Alabama, who earned the right to play in a conference championship game in Atlanta against Georgia? I'm not entirely sure, Bobby, what exactly the committee is going to tell us come Sunday. I do believe in 2 teams right now deserving probably a better at-large stake than they are getting. It is both BYU and, of course, Miami, who is still behind Notre Dame. The odds, though, when I look at the national title prices that I would still look at, assuming Notre Dame is going to make it, is the Fighting Irish at 10-1. Just to compare, Miami is 100-1 to win the national championship. That is very much availability rather than actual talent on that team. And it's still Oregon for me, who I think clinched things up down the stretch with key victories against USC and on the road in Seattle against Washington. The Ducks at a 10-1 price, still very intriguing to me.
All right, before we get to the game, since we just wrapped up the regular season, Ben, was there one over/under, like win total, that you felt particularly proud of, that you smashed? And
Many.
You said, well, maybe there's a lot, but
Many.
maybe the one that you felt really good about.
There were many that I enjoyed, Bobby, because I got in early. Way back when I was in New York and the win totals on FanDuel came out, I jumped in on 3 that I was a really big fan of, that we saw movement in every one of those numbers. Oklahoma over 6.5. That closed at 7.5 with hefty juice. That easily carried the way. Illinois did not have the season that I anticipated in terms of being a 10-win football team, but I did bet the over on their win total at 7.5 when it opened. Not when it closed at 8.5. So to get to 8 with the victory for the Hat against Northwestern was a big one there. The one I took probably the most pride in was Georgia Tech, because I was on that thing early, over 7.5. Of course, the Jackets with a chance to play in the ACC championship game in the final 2 weeks of the regular season. Not the ending of the year. I think Brent Key or those, of course, for the Ramblin' Wreck expected, but still sailing over that number. So those were the 3. Well, technically I had 4. We're not going to talk about Florida, but 3 of the 4 that I bet early in the month of May when those numbers became available, coming through pretty easily, felt pretty good.
3 out of 4 ain't bad. And when you do that, were those even unit disbursements, or were you heavier leveraged into one than others?
No, even unit disbursements. Even for some like Oklahoma and Illinois, when I got those numbers, I bet them even with some substantial juice on the over, but I was happy to get it before it moved up by a win. In the case of the Illini, it would have cost me.
Yeah, that's good stuff, Ben. I appreciate it. That's, you don't really think about it. And I was thinking, we got here to championship week. I'm sure there's some over-unders. I knew you talked about Illinois earlier in the season. Yeah. And Oklahoma, I mean, listen, dude, you were at the buffet table there about week 9 with them, 10. Like they were rolling, covered it up big for you. So that's really nice. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to get into these games though, and then we'll do maybe some Heisman odds on the third segment before we get out of here. But first, we got a message from our friends at FanDuel. So you know how fast the NFL game days move. One big play, everything changes. That's why live betting on FanDuel. It's a game changer with FanDuel. You can bet in real time while the game unfolds. Score just flipped, jump on a new spread or a live money line. Wide receivers heating up, bet the next touchdown score or total yards. Think that drive stalls in the red zone, take a live field goal prop or fade the total. Live player props, team totals, drive results, updated spreads, next play markets. It's all there. It's fast. It's fun. And with FanDuel, your live bets move as quickly as the game does. So whether you're riding momentum or fading big plays and the hype, FanDuel puts you right in the middle of every moment. Visit FanDuel.com/bigplay to download the app and bet the NFL live all season long. Must be 21 older and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, 18 older and present in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com. Call 1-888-789-777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelp betonlinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. All right, back with more Ben Stevens after this. Welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show, and obviously a lot of moves, a lot of coaching changes happening. As we get into that, we can talk, Ben, about how those might impact some of these games. The offensive coordinator for Ohio State, Brian Hartline, is going to be taking the South Florida job, replacing another Buckeye, Alex Golish, who went to Auburn. He is going to stay with Ohio State through the playoff run, especially this week, obviously with the short duration until the Big Ten championship. Ohio State, it is down to 4 now. This thing opened up at 5.5. I mean, Ben, how much lower do you think this thing can get? Can I get it to a field goal before I take the Buckeyes?
No, I do not believe this thing is going to touch a field goal, Bobby, or even 3.5. I believe this is the valley of the number. However, it should be noted that when Indiana played at Oregon earlier in October, IU opened as a double-digit underdog in Autzen, and everybody in the public betting market, you, your best friend, and your mother, ran to the window to bet on the Oregon Ducks because we had seen this fabled Curt Cignetti squad step up in class in competition and get absolutely hammered like against Ohio State last year and Notre Dame in the college football playoffs. So the public market was heavy on Oregon at home in Autzen in that awesome atmosphere. How could you blame them? And yet that line kept working toward the Hoosiers, from 10 closing at 7. And of course, Indiana not just keeping that game within one possession, but winning outright. We are seeing something similar here. The betting market is very heavily publicly on the Ohio State Buckeyes. The sharp money is on Indiana. I believe IU has proven that they can step up and play with the best of the best, as they are one of the best teams in the country. Not just ranked number 2, but probably deserving of being that second best team, just a step behind Ohio State by my margin at this moment. But Bobby, I think this line movement is for real, and it's a lot of sharp money backing IU to stay in this football game against Ohio State.
I want to go to, so now we've covered the Big Ten championship game. The ACC is an absolute mess with Duke playing Virginia, and Duke, we'll get to that one. But the one that interests me is because JMU ranked above Duke, should they win. UNT and Tulane both ranked above Duke, should they win. What do you got on this AAC matchup? Because JMU's playing Troy. Troy's 8-4. I love their strength coach. Know Darryl very well. But UNT and then Tulane, right? -2.5, something like that. 66.5, man. Like, what do you have in this matchup? And then also, who do you got winning it?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Schlegs, because this is one of those spots, as Bobby alluded to, that we are going to see this crazy coaching calendar on full display. Eric Morris on his way to Stillwater to become the head coach of Oklahoma State, the current head coach for UNT. John Sumrall, of course, who was donning the Florida Gators and doing the chop on Monday, was back talking about the American Championship game on Tuesday for Tulane in full regalia, getting ready for a conference title showdown. The game is in New Orleans. These are not neutral site games like we will see for the Big Ten title, SEC championship, ACC, Big 12, and whatever. These are played at the home stadium of the top seed. That's Yulman Stadium in the Big Easy for the Green Wave. And yet they are booked currently as a 2.5-point home underdog against North Texas. I'm in love with what Eric Morris does offensively. I am in love with what we have seen out of the Mean Green all year long. They have the nation's leading passer in Drew Mestamaker, more than 3,800 passing yards. They've got one of the most dynamic offenses that you will see. It's not just Mestamaker, it's the running back who can do everything, in Caleb Hawkins as well. That is why the total Schlegs is at 66.5. That is the complete opposite of what Tulane wants to do. They are built on the defensive side of the football, and they are built by running the football with their quarterbacks. You'll remember the name Jake Retzloff, the former BYU QB, now there for Tulane. The betting market is buying back in on the Green Wave to pull off a slight outright upset at home in New Orleans. If Tulane does that, book their spot to the college football playoff. Frankly, the winner of the American is going to get into the CFP. Schlegs, I'm not sure if we'll probably talk about the ACC championship. I'll just say this. what was not asked to Hunter Yurachek by Reese Davis, I thought was a miss on Tuesday. It might have been asked in the conference call with all the reporters afterward, but you really got to search through social media to kind of find those reactions if it's not about Notre Dame and Miami. What was not asked, because as you mentioned, the Dukes are ranked 25th in the college football playoff rankings. Duke, however, is not ranked. If Duke beats Virginia, the number 17 team in the country, would they vault JMU? Or is because JMU is ranked right now ahead of them, but a 24-point favorite against the Troy team and expected to win that game handsomely, does JMU just not get the bump deserving of it? That was the question that was not asked. If Duke pulls the upset, a slight one in Charlotte in the ACC title game and JMU rolls, is it JMU to the college football playoff, or could Duke vault the Dukes in terms of those rankings?
Very good question, because I think everybody just assumed they're kind of static where they are at this point, but I think that's very well in play, Ben. One of the other games, start talking about rematches, Georgia-Bama. Bama getting the best of Georgia earlier this season. SEC championship, Georgia -2.5. Do the Dogs, who've been playing really well, it almost seems like they might run away with this based upon how Gunnar Stockton and that offense has looked.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point, Bobby. They have played really well offensively. Not last week. I mentioned they held Georgia Tech to only 250. Georgia only put up 260 yards of total offense. And the ground game was rather stagnant for the Dogs, which is where they have buttered their bread, so to say, and had Gunnar Stockton in control of that offense. Georgia's the fourth best rushing offense in the SEC, averaging more than 190 yards per game. What I am really intrigued to see in the SEC championship game in Atlanta is how different, if at all, does it look from the first matchup in late September in Athens, when Alabama won outright as a slight underdog to snap the 33-game home win streak for Kirby Smart and his Bulldogs. Because in that game, Ty Simpson had 3 total touchdowns, 2 through the air, and 276 yards. That was Georgia's kryptonite earlier in the year. Joey Aguilar was lighting them up. We saw Ty Simpson do the same. Even in the competitive game against Ole Miss, it was Trinidad Chambliss really leading the way. Well, UGA has been pretty good in the back end since, even in the game against Texas, in which they won by 25. Arch threw for 251, but a touchdown to an interception on 43 pass attempts. It was not efficient offensively for the Longhorns, and Georgia really good on the ground. Alabama, even winning against UGA on the road in Sanford Stadium, allowed the Dogs to have 6.7 yards per carry. Early in the year, Alabama was getting gouged on the ground. They have improved mightily. They have not allowed, since the Missouri game, an opponent to rush for more than 4.5 yards per pup. However, that has been against some of the worst rushing teams in the SEC statistically, none of them in the top 5. Like I mentioned, Georgia being the 4th best. How different does it look? And I'll just say this quickly. Alabama, an underdog against Georgia. Alabama has been booked as an underdog 7 times in the last decade, since 2015. 6 of those 7 games have come against UGA. Alabama has won outright in 5 of the 6 when booked as an underdog against Georgia. The lone win for Kirby Smart in that span, maybe the most important, not maybe, the most important, the 2021 national championship game, the ultimate trump card. But Georgia has really struggled against Alabama, so just to see them booked as a slight favorite in Atlanta is not necessarily the betting market telling you, well, Georgia's the right side.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. Come back. We got a little Heisman odds. I want to get to the ACC and Big 12 as well with Ben Scott Stevens. First, our friends at Exports. Parents and athletes, protect what matters most with Export mouthguards, trusted by professional athletes, designed by NHL team dentists. Export mouthguards are scientifically tested to help absorb those high-impact hits, protecting both your teeth and your brain. Export mouthguards, they feature 3 layers of advanced protection, including a patented use of carbon fiber, custom fit to your own unique smile. They 3D print those bad boys to your grill, which means more protection, better performance, max comfort, and clear communication, so you can focus on your game, not on your gear. Don't take chances with your safety. Visit exportguards.com/Bobby today and save 15% on your order. Export, protect what matters most. We got more of the Bobby Carpenter Show coming up next. I'm Garage Beer, and this is Bobby Carpenter.
Garage Beer. Beer flavored beer.
Beef with an F? Okay, my bad. It's crisp and cool, and it doesn't taste like I'm Bobby Carpenter. I drink in garages because my wife says I don't belong inside. If you like a cold breeze on your bag, drink garage beer. It's American, and so can you. Garage beer, beer-flavored beer. All right, our guy Ben Scott Stevens still hanging here with us as we get to the Big 12. I want to look there. Texas Tech, I think they're far and away the best team in the Big 12.
Sure.
They already beat up BYU earlier this season. It's the largest number of any of the Power Four spreads taking place in Jerry World at noon. Doesn't seem like the Cougs have much of a chance, does it, Ben?
That's a great question, Bobby. Texas Tech is one of the most dominant teams in the country. There are two teams that rank in the top 10 in every single statistical category in the sport. It is Texas Tech. It is Indiana. IU, the only one to rank top 5 in scoring offense, scoring defense, total defense. Texas Tech would join them, but they're 6th in total defense so far this season. But Texas Tech, incredibly dominant, as we saw in the game in Lubbock earlier in the year. In that game, really intriguing thing, the Red Raiders had 8 drives inside BYU's 25-yard line, 7 drives in the red zone, only came away with 2 touchdowns, one in the fourth quarter when they were already leading 19-0. And yet they still won that game by 3 scores. Can BYU keep this game competitive? One of the best rushing offenses in the Big 12. In fact, the second best, averaging more than 194 yards per game, only had 67 against Texas Tech in Lubbock. Was that a learning opportunity for Kalani Sitake and his freshman quarterback in Bear Bachmeier? I happen to believe that it is. The odds have never loved BYU, so I'm not surprised to see this number at 12.5. I think BYU stays within the number. Now, staying within the number is losing by fewer than 2 touchdowns. They could still lose by 10 in Dallas, and Texas Tech comfortably wins a conference championship. I do not think the Red Raiders are on upset alert necessarily. I do think this game looks more competitive than the first one we saw in Lubbock just over a month ago.
All right, I'm going to ask you this. So you've already kind of touched on the ACC championship game. Let's go back and look, because I've seen, there are people talking about, like, if Vandy was Ohio State, they'd be ranked higher.
No.
Well, if Vandy was even an Ole Miss or a bigger brand, maybe they would. But let's think about the worst case scenario. Duke wins. They're not jumping anything. They got 5 losses.
Yeah.
So are we looking right now? Because how do you hurt at Alabama for playing an extra game? Should they lose, have 3 losses, still get in? Texas has 3 losses, but they played the extra game to get the loss. Do you think that right now, as it stands, Ohio State, Indiana, Georgia, Tech, Texas Tech, but Tech, Oregon, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Bama, Notre Dame, then North Texas and JMU in there? Is that what you're kind of seeing, or will there be some other play involved in there?
Yeah, Schlegs, I think you're right in terms of what you just listed as the at-large spots available. I really think it comes down to 2 teams. Does BYU win outright in the Big 12 championship game in Arlington? If so, that gets you 2 Big 12 teams in and lessens one of those at-large spots. If Alabama loses, I do not expect the Crimson Tide to be bumped from the college football playoff. That's just not what the committee has shown us. They are doing everything in their power, including talking about gutsy efforts in a rivalry game against a 5-7 Auburn team. What I think it ultimately comes down to is this, Schlegs. If BYU loses, even by 10, even covering the number against the Red Raiders in the Big 12 title game, that would necessarily move Miami to 11 and have Notre Dame at 10. Or would the committee say Notre Dame is 9, Alabama loses in the SEC championship game, they're at 10 and keep Miami at 11, so they're not directly next to Notre Dame head-to-head? Ultimately, I think on Sunday, the decision is going to be Miami and Notre Dame. And if the head-to-head does not matter at the end of the year, then there is no point. We are delegitimizing results and wins. And if we are doing that in college football playoff, if we are taking actual results and saying that those games do not matter, not hypotheticals, not similar opponents, a direct head-to-head matchup, and saying that winning that football game, regardless of when it is, does not matter, then we've lost the plot completely.
All right, Ben, in about the last 30 to 45 seconds, give me your quick thoughts on the Heisman, as that'll be Voting will be in on Monday.
I really do believe that the winner of the Big Ten championship game between Fernando Mendoza and Julian Sayin is still going to win the Heisman Trophy. On FanDuel, Mendoza is the slight favorite in front of Diego Pavia, who is about a 25-cent favorite in front of Julian Sayin. In other spots, I would not mention them here, Julian Sayin is in front of everybody to win the Heisman Trophy. We talked about it in the game, expecting Julian Sayin to have a big game against Michigan. After that opening interception, he was 19 of 24 for 233 and 3 touchdowns. He had his Heisman moment. Can he deliver another against Fernando Mendoza and the Hoosiers in the Big Ten title? Or will it be Mendoza finding that Heisman-worthy performance to have the highlight reel to win in New York City?
Absolutely, Ben. We appreciate it, sir. Thank you. It has been fantastic. Looking forward to catch up next week as we start preparing for the playoffs.
Indeed. Appreciate you guys as always. Talk soon.
That's our guy, Ben Scott Stevens. He is the best. And what else is the best is Backer Gear, BCKR. Go check it out. Listen, it's the holiday season. Go get your friends, your loved ones, some gear from Backer. It looks good. It feels good. They've got more colors, more teams. They continue to expand their lineup. It's the fan gear that you're going to want because it has all the features and functionality out there for the best fans around. It's got free shipping right now. Go to bckr.com, get your order in, and use promo code all caps BOBBY at checkout for another 10% off. That's Backer. Go check them out today. Thanks for watching The Bobby Carpenter Show. Welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show. Ben Scott Stevens, one of the best. Does a great job for us. But it's time for our headlines. And with that, on Thursday, it's lift it or leave it.
Ooh.
Just like the Big Ten.
Yeah.
As Indiana, Ohio State ranked first and second. They have Oregon ranked fifth.
Yeah.
The Big Ten will get 3 of the 4 byes if Georgia or Texas Tech lose in their title games. Lift it or leave it.
They will get 3 of the 4. That's a leave. That's a leave. Because I think OSU, Indiana in that will be 1 and 4. I think you have I see UGA winning that game.
Said if they lose. Let's say Oregon or Texas Tech loses.
Oh.
That's the question. That's what makes it easy.
Sorry, I was just looking. Yeah, that does make it more difficult. If Georgia or Texas Tech lose, Oregon will be that guy.
Georgia's playing number 9 Alabama, Texas Tech playing number 11 BYU. Ole Miss is at 6. A&M is at 7.
I don't see the committee ranking them in the top. I just don't. I think that they'll probably somehow figure out a way to put Ole Miss or somebody like that in there and have an SEC. And then it's, oh man, does Texas Tech? They're already at 4. All right, I'll lift it. I don't know how they're going to finagle it. People are going to have to be jumping multiple spots to get ahead of them and looking at the body of work. Because how do you put? You know what? They probably put Alabama there.
You think Alabama will jump 9 spots as a 2-loss team?
They're
not 9, but jump, I guess, 5 spots.
It just depends on how highly they rate
the
SEC champion.
I guess
this is a good question.
It is really good because I brought this up. I think I started talking about this earlier this week when the rankings came out on Tuesday, because I started thinking if somehow, even if Texas Tech loses, like they're not putting BYU in there. BYU's not getting it. So Oregon, who jumped Ole Miss last week, by the way, neither of them are playing. So their body of work is in. So, and I know they asked Jurczyk, can teams move? Because last year they said they could not move, which the nuance of the question needs to be asked. Well, the nuance of the question is this: can idle teams move with respect to each other? Obviously, if Texas Tech loses, BYU is going to jump teams to get in there. Texas Tech will slide back. So there'll be movement around those teams. But can 2 idle teams who are not playing, can Oregon and Ole Miss flip-flop? Can Miami and Notre Dame flip-flop? And I don't see how you would do that. I think the committee, with knowing some of the people on there, they're no nonsense. I think that they care about it, but their job is to rank the top 25. And that's what they do, and they do it to the best of their ability. If they put Oregon in there at 5 and one of those two teams loses, I think they get in. I think the Big Ten has 3 byes. I don't think Indiana, unless Indiana gets smoked. I don't think Ohio State would get smoked. Unless Indiana gets blasted, that's the only way I see them potentially falling out. But I'm going to lift this because I think that that's a viable, real situation.
As you articulated, Bob, I could see that too, based on what they've said.
I don't think it'll happen because I think BYU is going to get beat by Texas Tech. And can Bama beat Georgia? They can. We'll see what happens. If BYU beats Texas Tech, Schlegs, and Georgia beats Alabama, the 9th-ranked Crimson Tide, not number 10 Notre Dame, will be left out of the playoff again. So basically, they're saying BYU will slide in as the conference champ. Texas Tech will slide back, but stays in. Georgia beats Alabama, giving them their 3rd loss, and ultimately they'll be left out, not Notre Dame. Lift it or leave it.
Alabama being left out because they lost.
They lost their conference championship.
I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think they're going to do that.
So
I think it would be Notre Dame. I mean, go ahead, Bob. Like I don't. Granted, they'll have 3 losses. Notre Dame would only have 2, but then it goes back to head-to-head versus Miami.
Well, and it goes back.
They just like, nope, we're not going to do that.
Well, it goes back, I think, to also the fact that you played a 13th game.
I agree with that.
If you want to punish teams for playing, then they're just going to say, we're not going to play in it. Pick somebody else. Ole Miss, you go in our place. And if you guys lose, then you fall out.
Right.
You know, like that to me is what's a little jacked up. So I don't think you can punish a team for losing if they are currently in with where they stand as an at-large team and they ultimately lose. Maybe if their starting quarterback gets hurt and he's done for the season, or that you get beat by 4 touchdowns, then that's maybe a little different. But if you just lose and everything is normal moving forward, I have to leave that. I cannot imagine that. I know you don't want a 3-loss team in, but you cannot punish a team for playing an extra game and having that extra data point when Notre Dame doesn't have a conference championship, when Ole Miss, Oregon didn't make their conference championship. Like that just doesn't seem right at all.
To your point, it's whoever wins the Ohio State Indiana game would be 1. Then in this situation, Georgia has beat Alabama. They would be 2. Then you have the Oregon team because Tech in this scenario lost. So then you would have the loser of Ohio State Indiana as your 3rd, and your 4th would then be Oregon. BYU would bump up, Alabama would go out, and now you have the 2 other teams. Texas Tech would slide down, BYU would go in. That would be your top 10. Notre Dame would be out, Miami would be out, and North Texas, Tulane, and JMU, 2 of those 3 would be in. Or potentially Virginia if they win that game.
All right. I agree with you on that, Schleich. Number 3, 7-5 Duke team will make the playoff with a win over Virginia on Saturday. Lift it or leave it?
Absolutely not. Leave it.
So
There's no way. There's no way you could put a 5-loss. And I'm going to go back, okay? And let's talk about the losses. Let's talk about them. 5 losses, okay? This is just terrible. Loss, Illinois, 45-19.
They were up.
Tulane, right? But then Illinois dominated that second half. Okay, they lost to Tulane. So head-to-head, Tulane wins.
That's the problem. That's what stings. You're going to have a hard time. Now, JMU is the team I think that they would have the argument of trying to get in on. But go ahead.
Well, JMU, right? Only loss was to Louisville, 28-14 at Louisville. Other than that, they ran everybody else. But they would then be 12-1, and you have an 8-5 team that's going to somehow jump up there. Like, they got 5 losses. That is the problem.
Virginia beat Louisville 30-27. What was the score of that Tulane game? Do you know, Schleichs, off the top of your head?
Tulane to what? Louisville?
Not JMU, I mean.
JMU Louisville game?
Yeah, they beat them by 2 scores. So that's
28-14.
They're going to go to like common opponents. They say head-to-head and common opponent. Like they start talking about that stuff. You're right. There's 0 chance they have of getting in, especially with JMU. And they can say they beat the number 17 team, and that might put them in a comparative metric. But you being that was Virginia, not even Duke. The Duke.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Virginia, not even Duke. Virginia barely beat Louisville. But I'll say this: I doubt Duke beat Louisville. Did they play Louisville this year?
I don't think so.
I mean,
I'm
JMU beat them.
I'm going right now. I'm doing this right now, bro.
Yeah, they didn't
Got you,
play
dog.
them. Pat's throwing it up there. They did not play. They did not play.
Guys, they beat Elon. Okay.
Yeah.
They beat NC State. They beat Syracuse. They beat Cal.
Yeah.
They beat Clemson. And that goes back to the game where they were like, that was that crazy play at the end in the end zone. They go back to that one of the refereeing. But like they beat UNC and they beat Wake.
Yeah.
They lost to UConn, who's 9-3. They already lost to Virginia. Now, it's hard to beat a team twice.
Yeah.
But Virginia already beat them.
But JMU has a victory, a 14-point victory over Louisville. Like, that's the reality. Now, I didn't watch that game, so I don't know if that game looks closer or felt closer maybe than what it ultimately was. But, I mean, you got to factor that in. They beat an ACC team.
They lost to Louisville, Bob, 28-14. That was JMU's only loss.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I thought they beat them.
Nope, that was their only loss. They beat the only team that they'd beaten in a power whatever conference was Washington State, 24-20.
Well, yeah, they consider Washington State a group of five. I mean, they got nothing now.
Okay, but like they beat Texas State and Marshall and App, but they're still 11-1. And I understand all of the things, guys.
All of the things.
But they're still 11-1, and you have a 5-loss Duke team. That is the problem.
I get it. All right, that is it for this edition of Lift It or Leave It. Coming up next, we got our tailgate talk where we answer your questions. So fire them away in the chat. I know we got some more Brian Hartline stuff. Schleggs is here. He can talk a little bit about that. All kinds of things with coaching movement. Buckeyes versus Indiana. Stay locked in here on the Bobby Carpenter Show. I'm Garage Beer, and this is Bobby Carpenter.
Garage beer. Beer flavored beer.
Beef with an F? Okay, my bad. It's crisp and cool and doesn't taste like I'm Bobby Carpenter. I drink in garages because my wife says I don't belong inside. If you like a cold breeze on your bag, drink garage beer. It's American and so can you. Garage beer. Beer flavored beer. Welcome to the Bobby Carpenter Show, and we got our tailgate talk, and we answer your questions. This is a good one from Chris Kersey.
Hey, real fast.
What?
Back to that. You mean to tell me JMU, North Texas, right? Boom. But that you could potentially bump up a 5-loss team? The only team that has there's only one team that has 4 losses in there, and that is Iowa in the Big Ten at 23 as 8-4. I'm just saying.
Okay. I don't think it's going to happen, Schleiks. I don't either.
There's no way. They would have to jump Tennessee, Arizona State.
Oh, I know.
Like, no way.
Okay, Chris Kersey threw this out and talking about the Heisman. Will the voting take a regional bias? There is always regional biases with the Heisman because that's what – I mean, the way that it's broke out, you have national voters and then you have regional voters who like cover teams, cover beats, cover conferences. And so usually you see the voting kind of split like that, and then the national people maybe look around, and people within regions too. They can have an open mind. You just don't vote for the people in your conference or the people in your region. But the one thing that I think Diego Pavia is going to get there because he's the only viable candidate from the SEC. And if I know folks from the SEC footprint, they will vote for their guy.
Yep.
They're all going to vote for their guy.
Yep.
And so I think Jordan Love should be, or Jeremiah Love should be there. But I think it's going to come down to Mendoza and ultimately our guy, number 10, Julian Sayin, because I think that's where most of the national stuff is going to be. But I do believe after thinking about this more, everybody in SEC land is going to be voting for Diego Pavia. The fact that the Big Ten has a 1 versus 2 and the 2 Heisman favorites, they cannot be happy about this.
Hey, don't forget Super Saiyan shirt, big play, Buckeyes.
There you go. Yes, you can go get that, Schleggs. Way to do it. It comes from Chaos Junkie. Why is Alabama in the SEC championship over Ole Miss and A&M anyway? Well, it comes down to the same thing, like with the tiebreakers and conference opponents, common schedules, all of those different things. I don't think A&M played any of them. Did Ole Miss play Georgia? And I can't remember exactly why it broke out like that, but I know if A&M lost, Texas beat them head to head. So, like, well, I guess what the hell does that have to do with where is Alabama? There was some common opponents, conference schedules. I had looked through it, but it was pretty clear if they lost, because Alabama, they didn't play any of those teams, and so there was something with.
But they beat
head-to-head.
UGA. They beat UGA.
They did
and
beat
Ole
UGA.
Ole Miss lost to UGA.
Yes, so common opponents. There was that, and then I have no idea why the Texas Tech lost, the Texas loss, how that figured in to everything.
Because they didn't play anybody. They didn't play any of them.
Well, and it may come down to Schlegs, like you said, just strength of schedule within the conference. Like, who did you beat and what their records ultimately were. So I think that is those tiebreakers get a little crazy with everything.
And I'm with you, because even if you look at it, like Oklahoma lost to Ole Miss, right?
Yeah.
And they also lost to Texas, but OU beat Alabama, right? And that was their one conference loss. And their only other loss in Alabama was Florida State.
Yeah.
There you
go. Goodness. Chris Kersey putting also in there. Any news on Chris Henry Jr. and his commitment? Not to my knowledge. Yes, last night, I don't think anything broke. I don't think there's been anything today. I know that Ohio State's battling. Ryan Day has been pulled into this and doing the very best that he can. It's tough while you're trying to compete against Oregon and SC. They're not playing in a conference championship. You are, and you're trying to go out there and recruit these dudes. So I know that a lot's been made. The sun will rise if Chris Henry does not commit. I know that they really want him here. Jeremiah Smith threw out a tweet.
Exactly.
We need you. We need you, man. Like, you're our guy. We need you here. And, I think he was very evident of that, because great players want to play with other great players. So I think that that's a big piece of it.
And I also think it kind of speaks very highly about what Jeremiah Smith's going to do. Hey, we need you here, bro.
One of the other questions in here, Chris Kersey throwing out, and I'll answer this right now. He's got a lot of great ones today. Would stink if they slotted the Bucs to play a semifinal game against Georgia in Atlanta? The way that I understand it, the first round, the Big Ten champ is going to the Rose Bowl. So that's the first round. Depending on who wins, and you're going in the second round, assuming that Ohio State gets the number 1 seed, plays in the Rose Bowl, and then ultimately is still the number 1 seed moving forward, they will get to choose their location. The number 1 seed will get to choose where they play for the semifinal. And so the 2 semifinal spots, I believe, Schlegs, are Phoenix, the Fiesta Bowl, I think, this year, and then Atlanta, Georgia for the Peach Bowl. If you're playing Texas Tech or something like that, you go to the Peach Bowl. If you're playing, depending on how then the rankings, everything goes, but if you're playing an SEC team, you want to drag them to the desert, man, because that's Ohio State always shows up really well in Phoenix. A lot of people come flying from California and Vegas, but there's a huge West Coast presence. So you don't need to worry about that, Chris. They would not be playing Atlanta in Georgia unless they lose to Indiana and lose the right to select their location. And then you're just at the mercy of where you're seated and who you're going to play. Yeah,
and then you would potentially not even play them, right? Or you would play them.
It just depends. If you're the 4, you're playing the 1.
Yeah,
if you're the 3, you'll play whatever. Whoever the 1's playing the lowest seed, and then the next 2 in the middle will play in the semifinals. So yeah, that's.
Hey Bob, what happens if and Chris is talking about in the semifinal, right?
Yeah, the semifinal.
What would happen if, I'm not going to even go to that worst case scenario, because the Buckeyes are going, baby. Let's go.
What if they lose? Like, what are you going to say? They lose to Indiana, or?
Yeah, what if they lost Indiana? Then you're the 2. But then what if Indiana loses, and now the
well, then it goes back to being. It goes back to the highest seed. Whoever the highest seed is going to the semifinal gets to select their locale. And like I said, talking to people, like if it's Texas Tech, probably want to go to Georgia. If not, if it's just about anybody else, you probably want to go to the desert just because there's such a big opportunity there. Neil OSU asks, does Heartline take Kenny Parker or Schlegel?
Great.
I don't know. That'll be interesting. I know that every position group kind of has strength coaches that work with them. And one of the strength coaches that work with Hart is neither it works with the
KP.
wide receivers. It's neither KP nor Schlegs. It's AT Antonio Turner, who we actually had on the show, Schlegs, if you remember back in the summer, does a great job over there.
And I'll tell you guys this, AT is phenomenal. KP is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing too is, and I'll give you guys a lesson learned in all of this, is you want somebody that you can unequivocally trust to run the program and is like-minded. And either any of the guys, we have Luke Rose, you have Higgs, right? KP, AT, home runs.
Yeah.
Home runs. And and that's the thing. You're going to see a lot of people and guys, and what's crazy is this coaching carousel isn't over. I was just thinking about this the other day, Bob. You have Tulane coming up. You have JMU coming up. Those haven't been filled, if I'm not mistaken. Right. So that's where could somebody else want to go? Because the advantageous thing for Hart taking USF is that Alex left it in a good spot, and you can recruit that then perpetuates you to the next one.
Yeah.
When you're in a good situation, it was the same reason why D'Antonio went to Cincinnati and Fick went to Cincinnati to get to Michigan State, to get to Wisconsin. You like to go to the ones that have had success, which is why a Tulane and a JMU have been very, very good.
All right, we got to take a quick break here. We're going to come back, Schlegs, and we'll give you your parting thoughts and side nuggets. All right, welcome back in the Bobby Carpenter Show, Schlegs. Yeah, throw them all up. The defensive awards. This can be your parting thoughts and side nuggets.
Well, I mean, we got some time, Bob, and I want you to hit on this too. So let's go with the first one, and that is Ohio State sweeps the defensive awards. Caleb Downs, Defensive Player of the Year, Defensive Back of the Year. Kaden McDonald, Defensive Lineman of the Year. Arvell Reese, Linebacker of the Year. And I would honestly say too, that was probably really close to his compadre and Sonny, because Arvell, that's the thing. He can really flash. He can do a lot of things. I'm telling you, Sonny had a phenomenal year as an inside linebacker, folks. But it's the first time ever that a team has swept all the awards defensively, and rightfully so. When you're the first team since 1975 to not allow an opponent to have 17 points, to average 7.8 yards per game, to only give up, I think it's something like 203
what was that?
yards.
7.8 yards per what?
7.8 points per game.
No, it was 84 points over 12 games. I think that's 7 points on the nose, I thought.
I don't know. Yeah, it was 7.6 going into the game.
Maybe
And the game 9. Okay. And I don't know. Maybe that was 84 going in. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is.
But all I know
Someone
is
told
this.
me that.
All I know is this. What does that say about Ryan Day's choice of hires that he's had with Matty P in this? And I go back to the flag. Bob, you and I, stomping for him and what he's going to do. And for a team that lost a lot of veterans to be able to, last year, best defense in the country, this year, even better. At Ohio State for the past 2 years, we have been blessed with this, which is why this game coming up against Indiana is so compelling, because it is good on good, because their defense is really good too. And I'm excited to watch the Silver Bullets, Bob.
Absolutely. Going to be a lot of fun, Schlegs. A lot of fun out there. But Caden McDonald, unbelievable inside.
Dude.
Arvell Reese, really good. And then obviously you have Caleb Downs, who won the Thorpe Award, or not the Thorpe,
he wins the Defensive Player of the Year.
The Woodson, whatever. And then won Defensive Player of the Year. So they won all 3 position groups and Defensive Player of the Year. And Sonny Styles, also first team
Yeah, throw those up there. They had all the other Doomajinks in there, which is awesome when I was looking at this because I also saw
all the
Brandon
other
Ennis,
Doomajinks.
all big specialist. First honorable mention. Oh, I don't know why you put him on the defensive team. I guess because he's
Well, that's where
receiving the punt.
that's where the return.
I got it. I saw that. But anyways, hey, you know what? Caden Curry, all you guys out there, like we show him love on this one. He's had a phenomenal year. IGB guys, first team.
Yeah.
How about that turnaround from last year to this year? I mean, again, development. OG Walt, Guerreri, let's freaking go. Everybody in the chat, Larry Johnson, developing those dudes. And that's the process.
Well, even Peyton Pierce legs got honorable mention,
Right.
Which is amazing. He's a third linebacker and really rotated a lot. They did some 3 linebacker sets, but not a ton. So it was awesome to see that. Lorenzo Styles getting honorable mention, all Big Ten. Kenyatta Jackson, which stinks because he was really come on and played really, really well here towards the end of the year. And you have Edric Houston and Taiwan Moreau, who both get an honorable mention. So those guys basically split the same spot. So that's what's awesome to see is that obviously the guys at the top are all really good. And then you've got Caden Curry, but in IGB, but even some of the guys who, maybe you weren't the frontline dudes, they were still getting awards. And it's great to see that.
Yeah, 100%. And I want to go back to, we were talking about Heartline. And the biggest thing in a program.
You got a minute and a half. So
I'm going to use like 30 seconds. The biggest thing in the program is when hiring your team, your staff, is the development aspect. And again, granted, we recruit at a very high clip at Ohio State, and that is the expectation. But none of these kids predominantly come in game ready outside of a Jeremiah Smith. When we saw him in spring football, we're like, oh my gosh, the dudes are put him on the shelf. That was a first of its kind for me to be able to witness that. But all these guys have gotten developed, and they all got better. And if you look at even the Michigan game, one thing I was talking to somebody at a funeral was Bryce Underwood's development through the season did not happen, but Julian Sayin has. He's gotten better. And I'll leave it on this, Bob, because I got 30 seconds. We just celebrated Bob Mansfield, and it's just the amazing impact on coaches and young people and that relationship. And it was just so humbling to be a part of it with Linda. And I told everybody, Bob,
that you tell them who Bob Mansfield is, Slags.
Well, Bob Mansfield was our class checker. He coached high school football.
Buddies with Tress. Yeah.
Buddies with Tress, but big in the Youngstown community, helped Tress when he was at Youngstown, helped him when he was here. Basically, he was the gap between coaches and players of the relationships of the hard convos. And he just had a special way, regardless of race, socioeconomics, of breaking those down and building that relationship to be just another outside voice of wisdom for dudes. And, Tress even said,
that's it. We love you, Schlegs. I appreciate it. That is it. This edition of the Bobby Carpenter Show. Thank you for tuning in. We will catch you again here shortly.